All right, friends, welcome back to the Pursuing Freedom podcast. As usual, I am extremely excited to introduce you to our guest today. I'm always excited, but I was born this way, so what are you going to do? I am here with my new friend, Char Klisares, who I only just met recently because we were both featured authors in a new book by a mutual friend, Scott Hudspeth, which you should all check out. It's called Agent Mastermind, and it's 17 strategies to explode your real estate business today. And Char is one of the featured authors in this book. I think she's got a copy there for us.
I do. I do.
Yeah. Anyhow, I reached out to Char before I reached out to anybody else because when I read the chapter of the book that she authored, I was so blown away by not only her very quick success that she's had in her real estate career since getting into the business in 2013, but what she's gone on to do to create balance amidst her massive success. It's a really interesting story. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about it. Char's with Remax Hilltop in Des Moines, Iowa, and she is also the leader of the One Agent team. And she's going to tell us all about it. And so I just welcome you, Char, and thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'm so honored I'm the first one from the book.
Yes.
I'm the last chapter of the book, but I'm the first one in.
We saved the best for last and made you first.
That's going to be my tagline. Yes. I love it.
So tell us a little bit about your story. I mean, you got into real estate in 2013. You have done a ton of volume in a short period of time, but what you've gone on to do to scale that and make yourself available not only as a business owner, but a mom, a coach, a mentor, a speaker. I mean, you're doing so much, and I can tell from looking at you that you're happy and enjoying the ride, which I think a lot of agents listening want that. They want that spark back, and they want that happiness.
Yes. Well, it all started, actually, I got in full-time practice in real estate in 2013, but I got my license in 2007. And I went to my very first real estate event, and I realized that I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know anything about a house. I didn't know what was right or wrong. Not to mention the people dressed really fancy and had very nice cars, and they spoke very proper. And it was very intimidating at first. And so within one day, I put my license on reserved and realized that what I needed to do was find a way, because I was a single mom, find a way to learn and get paid for it so that eventually someday I would jump into real estate. So for the next 5 to 6 years, I jumped into the trades. And I don't just jump in small, I dive deep. And I got into the flooring industry. I took a leadership role at our local home builder association. I was president of Professional Women in Home Building, got active in the legislative affairs, and from there went on to a national company that got me some exposure and different connections on how contracts were written. And just as I was going through it, my main litmus at the time was if it gave me more time with my children, then I would take that job. My first job was every weekend. The job from there, I went to one that gave me every Sunday off, and then it was every weekend off. And that was my jump to go find a different position. And so when 2013 came around, it was actually the end of 2012, I knew I wanted to jump back into real estate. I had everything in place that I needed, and I thought that I would do pretty good because I had knowledge. And I know when I am selling something, even if I don't know what I'm doing, if I do it confidently, then people feel that. Yeah. And so when I jumped into real estate and realized those last 5 years really made me very knowledgeable on helping both buyers and sellers. Now, at first, I jumped in and worked with a lot of buyers at first. I think that's very standard in the real estate industry. There's not a whole lot of overhead with working buyers. And very quickly, within, I want to say the first year and a half, the first year I sold 32. That was a busy year with buyers because they take a while. You don't know how long. And that doesn't even include all the ones that jumped on me, or I lost to somebody else in an open house, or that never came to fruition or maybe fell apart. So there was those lessons along the way. And I do remember every single time I felt frustration, that I was never frustrated at the client. I was frustrated at myself for not introducing something in my system beforehand. And so even when something would fall apart or a client fired me. I had that happen. I had some amateur mistakes made when I was an amateur. And I never, I mean, in a moment, you might get mad in that moment of the situation, but being able to say, how could I have avoided this? Or what could I have done earlier? And I would always remember that and go back and fine tune my system, so that then now I was giving buyer interviews and having somebody make purchases on homes within the first 4 to 8 homes was pretty average. If they're in my car, they're writing, and they're not in my car until they're ready. And so there was good scripts that I've learned. A lot of it was my brokerage and some of the training that they provided, but also just the hybrid of when I was learning, I knew everybody else was using as scripts. So I would also look at, when I'm reaching out to my database, if you send me a piece of snail mail, I don't check my mailbox but twice a month because everything's auto pay. So I didn't do snail mail pieces. I started jumping on social media because that's what was getting through to me. And I started paying attention to what worked in my world. For instance, I don't text clients back. I was sending them little videos of, hey, it's Char. I'm going to be giving you a call. I just wanted you to get my phone number. And I was getting really good results. And so my numbers just kept building and building and building. And at the end of my first year, I had hired a full-time coach. And it was really, it seems like at the time, it seems like it was very scary to do. But now I look at my numbers. When you hire a coach, you see typically immediate results in your business within the first quarter. I did. And the numbers went up from there. And then they were able to make short work of things that would take other people longer times. At one time, I had 3 different coaches just for the different areas I was mastering, because I was leveraging their knowledge in my business in a short kind of way. And through their coaching me, I was able to focus on the numbers that would increase the ability to grow my business and not get caught up in things that keep me busy or things that weren't important. And, looking back now, I can connect all the dots, but when you're going through it, there were days that were just a mess. And I would remind myself that if it was easy, everybody'd do it. I also would have to remind myself, I'm pretty competitive. Not necessarily with anyone else. I'm competitive with myself.
With myself, yes.
Yes. And so I would have to have talks with myself, because I would see somebody else. Now, maybe that person has been in business for 10 years and I'm only in my 1.5 year. And it was just like, and so I wanted to make sure I was watching them and seeing the activities that they're doing. And I didn't ever study much as far as the capping out or what the numbers are, or what traditionally happens, because there's nothing traditional about me. So I didn't ever look at that. And so by the time it started getting in my 3rd year so big, and my focus was on sellers then, because sellers don't take as long. And in the day, I've only got so many hours. So when the jump from the buyers to the sellers happened in my 2nd year of business. My coach knew, hey, you've got good scripts, you've got good numbers. I had a really good recipe for getting homes sold. Let's get you focusing on that. And it's kind of like trying to stop a train. It's not an overnight. It's a conscious awareness of making sure when I'm given 2 choices to make sure I focus on the listings. And with that, my phone kept ringing. I kept ringing. And so I would have a listing call, and then I'd have a buyer call me on one of my listings, and my coach, who I'm on the phone with every week, is going to hold me accountable, and I'm supposed to have some new listings. I know I've got to go on this appointment. And so I felt I'd done a good job marketing homes, that I have buyers reaching out to me, and I have an obligation and a responsibility to make sure, because I've seen some really irresponsible agents in our industry that if I'm not helping them, they're going to go down the road and who knows what they're going to have next. So figuring that process out, because I hadn't mastered all of how do you hire and how do you leverage. And I had a transaction coordinator, which was a godsend from the beginning. But once you get above 32 transactions, you're probably needing the help of full-time staff. And that process of finding, interviewing while you're running a business it really creates a lot of demand and a lot of confusion on what you're stressing, what you're not. And And so I just started leaning on my lender at that time because I knew that my lenders I've got relationships with 2 to 3 different ones, just depending, but they're good and they work like I do and they're going to answer their phones. And if I couldn't help them, I knew if I was going to give them to one of my lenders that the lender would make sure that they're going to partner them with an agent who's helping them. So in effect, I'm not going to be able to help that client, but through helping them and referring it to my lender, it will help her, him. And at the time, that was my leveraging. And so it was when I went into my year 3, and every year I'd have different coaches focus on different things. I didn't have the same coach through all 3 years. In my 3rd year, then it was, how can we bring this more in-house and capture that income and it wasn't ever about chasing the dollar because I was making more money by then than I had ever thought I would make. Now it was just for me more of a responsibility of making sure that somebody's got their my sign in their front yard. That doesn't happen very, very easily. People aren't just bored. There's something going on in people's lives when it comes to real estate.
Sure.
And that was something that when I jumped in, it kind of feeds my codependent side in a very healthy way because I get paid for it now. And I wanted to be responsible knowing that people are truly needing help. And then when we brought it in-house, I did a traditional team approach and it just didn't work. It was sloppy and messy and it really pulled me out of production, which is something, and even going back reading leadership and taking leadership classes, it is one of those, if somebody's not going to show up for themselves, they're not going to show up for me and my business. And how long does that process continue? And even with training and slowing down and taking training for how do you recruit and how to do personality profiles, I see greatness in everyone, and that's a problem.
Oh my gosh. I knew you were my spirit animal.
Yes.
So I teach a class on, I help realtors identify, what, when, who, how to delegate. And I explain my process for screening applicants. And what I say to them is that I can't even have a conversation with them until they've done 4 steps of homework that show that they are possibly a fit for the candidacy, because I love everybody. Everybody. And if I meet you, I'm going to be like, I don't care what your personality profile says. It says you're disorganized because I think you're awesome. We could be best friends.
Yes. And it's a huge problem in a business. And I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yes.
And so at the end of the night, everyone's going home at 5 o'clock and I'm staying in the office till midnight picking up the slack. Yeah. And you can do that for a little bit, but I'm here to tell you, it's about 6 months. Yeah. And then it is, and also there's a responsibility with growing agents is what I realized is I just raised a few brats that I was getting calls from buyers that were very disappointed and they're not getting the service that they deserved. And so I quickly just scrapped the team, had a talk with my coach and decided to shut it all down and go back to what we were doing before, which was let's give them to the lenders. And until something else comes up. And she was like, what else are you thinking? And I was like, I didn't know that day because there was a lot of, with the agents that I had on my team, when I broke the team apart, I still listened to what they had to say. It didn't mean that I bought into their perspective, but I listened to their perspective. And I listened to the buyer's perspectives and the seller's perspectives, and I'd listen to the other agent's perspective. And so it just had to digest inside me for a little bit, but it was about 2 weeks. And then I just woke up one day and the whole one agent team was there on, this can all come together.
Before we get into this one agent team, because it's so amazing and it's so full of
simple. It's so simple.
I know, but I want to go back a little bit because first and foremost, I know that you're breezing through your story as if it's no big deal, but I'm sure that a lot of folks listening would want to know, how did you go from 0 to 32 units in your first year, even to begin with? Like, before you get to the point of overwhelm, there's a hunger phase. And it sounds like you had such fast success in your first year. Is there anything that you attribute that to that you could share with the listeners?
Yes, I really plugged in with the people who already knew me, liked me, and trust me. So for those 5 years that I had done work in the trades and stuff, I just went back to all those people and all those connections and all those people I didn't have to sell myself to at all. And so on social media, putting out there that I was in real estate, purposely making a top 5 list of the people I knew who were pretty big advocates of mine, and making sure I stayed in touch with them, and not in touch where I'm talking to them about real estate. It was just that I'm staying in touch with them the way I would want to stay in touch with them. I was already doing it, but I made sure to systematize it, and that I was doing it more, and truly just coming from contribution. When I spoke to them, I didn't speak real estate at all. I spoke what's going on in your life and how can I help you. And I'll be darned if all of a sudden they told me the clown for their kid's birthday party next week just canceled and they're stuck and they don't know what they're going to do. And when I was out maybe networking, or I do a lot of networking events, I do a lot of things in person. All of a sudden I meet somebody that was a clown and I'm making a connection just that quick.
But yeah, that's literally exactly how I went about building my business. Unfortunately, I didn't figure that out until I was 5 years in and dirt poor. So I appreciate and respect the fact that you did that right out of the gates. So when you hired a coach right away, right?
I hired a coach at the end of my first year. Yes.
And when you were getting going, do you feel like the experience you had in previous industries led to somewhat fearlessness on your behalf in terms of, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. So I'm just going to push my fears aside, get outside my comfort zone, make sure everybody knows that I'm here to serve in every way, and that real estate becomes a byproduct? Or did you have a game plan for success right out of the gates? Like, this is what I'm going to commit to on a daily, weekly basis.
When I first got into real estate, I really just thought it was sales. And so I knew that just from the consistency of showing up, you're going to catch some fruit. I did not know how purposeful real estate would bond with who I am, in realizing that there's a life event going on in these people's lives.
Sure.
There's a responsibility there. And so that really fed into my purpose. And so getting into something that aligns with my purpose, and then being able to protect them. And I can't stop whatever life event is happening, good or bad. I can't even change that or help that, but I can help make the real estate part pretty easy. And so that was my goal all along, was to make sure that I treated others the way I would want to be treated. And who knew that I would want to be treated so good, because that's what I did.
Sure.
If somebody called me, I got back to them. If my sign doesn't, I picked up the phone. It seems like it's basics, but when people are going through life events and you're really there for them. And I mean, did I overserve at times? Some people might say I did. I don't feel I did, because if you're calling me at 10 o'clock at night and I was up and I didn't have anything going on, and I answered my phone and I talked to you because all of a sudden you found out some horrible change in your plans, they remember that. They remember being there. They remember that somebody cared enough to listen and got them through. And so my whole plan going in was just to make sure that I treated others the way I want to be treated, and that I would show up genuine to who I am. Whatever decisions I made did not have to make sense to other people, as long as they made sense to me. Sure. And even when there was, for instance, my first year in real estate, I had a for sale by owner. I had represented the buyer. There was a for sale by owner. She was an attorney. So I had my client make the earnest money check out to this person, not to an attorney or a law firm, just this person. And the deal ended up falling apart. And my people she was fighting on giving their earnest money back. Well, had this been held for my broker, they would have gotten it back. But she was an attorney and it was going to take time, and my people just didn't have time. So I went ahead and paid them back the $1,600. Nobody told me to do it, but I knew they were stuck, and I knew that they needed that money to buy if they were going to go on. And they actually broke up with me, didn't talk to me again, didn't buy their next house through me. And that was okay, because I was supposed to be the one that knew that, and I didn't. I set them up for a failure. It wasn't a failure. It all worked out the way it was supposed to. But I knew going through it, I did not feel like I had done anything wrong intentionally, but from a professional standpoint, I had. And so I then had the obligation and responsibility. Now, if I saw them today at a grocery store, I would say hi and look them in the eyes, because I serviced them the way I would want to be serviced. Now, I don't know what they would do back, but I know that I did what I felt was right. And so I learned along the way everything that I did wrong, and there was a lot of wrongs. There was a lot of wrongs. I learned along the way and just didn't do it again.
Yeah.
And
No,
took
for
notes.
sure.
Yeah.
You don't go through this industry without making mistakes, and you don't come out unscathed. But if you, as long as you keep learning, you will keep growing and keep improving.
Yes.
And it's interesting you talked about the life event thing, because while buying a house or selling a house is a big life event, what we talk a lot about in our team is that it's only one aspect of their whole life. So what else is going on? If they're frustrated, is it really, are they frustrated at you, or are they frustrated at the process in general, or are they frustrated because they're stressed because their mom has just been diagnosed with cancer? We need to know what's going on in their whole life to be able to remove all the transactional piece and just connect at the human level. Let the transaction be a byproduct of caring about people at the human level. And it sounds like you do the same thing.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Well, and with that knowledge, because usually at the human level, there's a lot of emotions that go in with that. And the only thing that can balance emotion is logic. And so being the one that's in a situation that doesn't have all the emotions that they might have, it also allows me the opportunity to introduce logic and balance when things are getting a little out of whack, or somebody, when mom, we can't help that event. That's going to happen. But I know that there are things that I can do through the process, and it introduces logic at the right time that makes them feel safe and secure. Because that's what we all want. We want to be heard. We want to feel safe. We want to know that somebody cares, and that we feel responsible.
So you mentioned also fine-tuning your systems. And I'm just curious, do you feel like right out of the gates, I mean, I always, in the early years of building systems, I realized so many of the systems lived inside my brain, and then I would hire people and expect them to learn by osmosis.
Yes.
And it took me a while to realize that these systems are actual systems, but they need to get out of my brain and onto paper. So, did you start early on documenting things in a way that it could be more plug and play and create that consistency for yourself? Or was that something that came with hindsight and you realized I need to backtrack and put this into a system?
A little bit of both. A lot of it was in my head, like you. And then I knew that there were certain things from this point on, because I had a transaction coordinator, that once something goes under wrap, I wasn't responsible for that. So I kind of fielded that off, and it's always been that way, and that works seamlessly. But once I had my full-time admin, and my second year I had a full-time admin, and some of it was not necessarily me slowing down to document it, but showing her and having her slow down and create the documentation of what's going on. And that would also be nice, because when something got missed, then we were able to pull it up and go back and add it in. And it could have very easily been that I just hadn't slowed down enough to teach her. And so it's a little bumpy when you're doing that part, because it's so time consuming. And my first coach had tried to get me to slow down to do all of that. And that's not my personality style. My personality style is fire hose you, and then I'm going to go have a good day and go make a lot of money. And
how come every time you say something, I'm like, I feel like someone is speaking my language here?
It's because we're spirit
problem.
Yes. I remember in the morning with my admin, we got to where I was on like item number 10, and she was still writing down number 2, and she'd ask me a question, and that would just freeze me because I'm already at number 10.
Yeah.
And so then we had to get where it was that she would turn her voice recorder on her phone, and that she would record our conversation, and that I don't want her to write anything. I want her to be with me here and now, and ask the things that are top of mind, because she's such a good, deep, root-making thinker, that when she's thinking of something, it needs answered, it needs addressed, because I'm not thinking like she's thinking. But at the moment, we've got 10, 20 minutes that we're together, so you need to record this so I can get my plate cleared off, and I'm going to call you back around noon, and we're going to touch back up on everything that you have questions from this, and then anything that's happened since then. And once we got into that routine and clear boundaries of what she's responsible for, what I'm responsible for, and then when are we coming back together, because we're touching base 4 times a day, first thing in the morning, mid-morning, you've got an afternoon call and an evening call. And that way she's handling all emails, all phone calls. And if something comes up, she could say, well, I'm going to talk to Char in a couple hours and I'll get you an answer. If it was an emergency, we don't use the text message and the phone. We use a lot of Google products. And so when I'm coming in and out of appointments and different things that I'm doing, if I saw that she had reached out we use Google Hangouts, I knew it was pretty important because she wouldn't have sent me a message there. So we had to figure out the systems that separate us from the normal life busyness of phone calls and text messages, because outside of work, I'm also a mom and I've got family, and I've got, you got that text message in the middle of the day where the kids forgot their permission slip, and all of that's important also and needs addressed. But with the business, when I'm in business mode, I'm in business mode. And it's not easy to, for lack of a better word, weed out distractions. But also when I'm in home mode, I'm in home mode. Mm-hmm. And so there are the clear lines of having just here, just there. I mean, I had a spiral notebook. Here, Scotty, here's our book. A spiral notebook. And if it was this way, it was the business stuff. So when I was with my family, if something came top of mind, I could just write it down, because if I can get it out of my head and know it's something I'm going to address, then I would come back to that spiral notebook. And when I would flip the notebook over this way, this was the family stuff. So if I was at work and there was something in my mind about family stuff, I'd put it on there. So it was for me, I needed to write it down to be able to keep track of it. But getting the systems in place, standardizing things, like my listings all go live on Thursdays, and simple tweaks that you don't necessarily have to tell a seller that you're not going to go live till Thursday, especially when we say we're going to send you your listing paperwork, you review them over the weekend, admin's going to look out on Monday, we're going to send the photographer on Tuesday, Wednesday we're going to proof everything, and you're live Friday. Well, just because there's activity, they think that on Monday they're going live. They're really not going live until that Thursday. But our listings always only go live on Thursdays. So we have one day to make sure if there's any syndications or something spelled wrong, we have a day to correct it before the weekend hits. And so those little tweaks of standardizing things and getting it where now my admin knew, you know what, if you have a doctor's appointment, you have sick kid, you could do all those things on every other day but Thursday. On Thursday, you've got to be dead because we've got listings going live this day. So once we started doing that, and now we were feeding people into our machine. Now that didn't mean that we didn't customize every experience that came through, but we were able to feed them into our machine in a way that was able to get us more performance.
Sure. And just out of curiosity, when you mentioned you've had several different coaches, have they all been active real estate agents, former real estate agents, or have they been from a variety of different industries helping you with different aspects of just entrepreneurship in general?
Yes, a mixture of both. My third year, I introduced a life balance coach because she had asked me when was the last time I had dinner with my girlfriends, and it was just like, crickets. and just that life balance, because I really do love what I do.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel like work when I'm helping people, but I still need to make sure I have that balance and that I don't get so busy and involved in my business that I lose vital friendships. Or the kid thing, I never really had a problem with balancing, because by the time I jumped in, my kids were all either graduated high school or they would leave at 7 a.m. And as long as I was back by 8 p.m., they never thought I left that day. And so they just thought I sat on the couch all day when they came in the door. So the kid thing was already pretty easy because my kids were older. So they were already driving, and it was pretty easy to do that. And then by chance, if they were home, my kids would go with me on some things when I'm planting signs in the yard. There were more than a couple of times where they would go and meet clients. I really love my elderlies and probably overly take care of them. And I had to go help change light bulbs once, and my kids went with me. And so I think my children seeing that too, so they understand that this is part of what mom does, helps them gain that understanding. But that it's been a balance of real estate. I've got coaches who teach coaches also, because I'm gravitating into that direction. And then my life balance coach, she was a doctor, and that just did coaching of finding life balance, passions, purpose, bucket list. There's a lot. Now you've got this great career, and you've got great income, and you've got great systems in place. You've got great leverage, and now you have extra time. What do you do with it?
Yeah. I've been talking about this with my husband lately, because as we've built the team to create space to do more to help grow the business, and then you do that, and then you create more systems and you create more space, you wake up one day and you realize I have a little bit of space today in my schedule, And I'm wired to try to fill it with work because it feels like if I don't work 8 or 10 or 12 hours today, that I'm not being productive because that's what I've been doing for so many years, that's what I'm wired to do. And so to slow down and just go for a long, slow coffee or take a hike in the woods or go for a 3-hour bike ride or just say it's okay to ski today.
Yes.
That is really hard for a lot of A-type entrepreneurs and really driven people. We want to fill every minute with work and we forget what we're missing all around us along the way sometimes.
Yes. And to allow ourselves the permission to have it.
Yes.
And so, right, because it's not typically inside the normal 9 to 5. What I find is my free time tends to be afternoons. So like from noon to 3, 4 o'clock. And I would find there's this blank of time that buyers, sellers, everybody's working, nobody's available. And I have got good systems. So now I have a friend that I'll go hang out at the pool and just make sure that, it's just for an hour or two, but you know what, I can allow myself those benefits and those rewards. Now, shutting the brain off when you're in the pool is a different story. But
the other thing is what it took to get to creating space. The irony is that many will never, ever sacrifice what it took to get to where you are today. And so, I mean, we should touch a little bit upon the fact that you mentioned you did a year where you had 71 transactions. And ironically, I mentioned that the year that I almost burned out and quit the business was when I did almost 80 and I didn't have help. And, talk to me a little bit about what that looks like, because I know that some people listening are doing that kind of volume and maybe have been for year after year, and they're not necessarily slowing down and figuring out a way to create that balance. So any thoughts you have to share on that?
I do. Now, I had a life event happen to me that year because I had gone through a divorce. And so for me, I just jumped into work because it was an environment I knew I can control. And I knew what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm just going to make more money and help more people. And so the balance of what was going on in my own life, that I was going through a divorce, I was still able to help others and put on that happy face. So that year I was really focused, and it balanced what was going on in my own personal life.
Sure.
So I worked a lot. I didn't mind working a lot. I was always on call. I didn't mind being on call, but it was all the time. I mean, I was burning through my assistant pretty quick, because she'd come back, she'd go home, next day she comes in, there's 5 transactions in front of her. So yeah, I mean, it was busy and
was there
chaos.
Was there a moment where you ran out of steam? I mean, did you ever wake up and say, enough is enough, I can't go on working this many hours? Or did you just naturally gravitate towards where you're at today, which we're going to talk about next?
Actually, that year I also took a vacation every single month. And I think a lot of that had to do with my coach, knowing that I'm burning really when I'm not here. And when I take vacations, I couldn't be here where I'm at because I'm running into people I know, and it's not a vacation. It turns into work. So I would leave and go out of state or out of country for vacations. Now, it would be maybe a 4-day weekend. It wasn't an extended 10 days, but they were a 4-day, a 3-day, a 7-day here. But I took a vacation every month, and it was the reward for working so hard. And that when I was on vacation, I do remember I took my kids to Mexico, something I never thought I would ever be able to do. And I took my kids all to Mexico for spring break, and I was on a boat with them. And how bad is my job that I could be in Mexico and still work? But I remember thinking at that moment, I need to get a different admin because I'm working entirely too much on this trip. And I'm on a boat with my kids and they're snorkeling, and and they were fine snorkeling, but I was working from the boat. So, I mean, it was fine. And balance is not a destination. Balance is a constant verb that what balanced me then isn't the same thing that balances me right now. And so reevaluating and checking that and checking back in with it and making sure to ask, am I living the life that we don't work to live? You work so that you can have the life that you want to create. And am I doing that, and checking in with that frequently?
I don't know. That might have to be the title of this That
That is
poetry right there. Balance
yes.
is not a destination. Balance is a constant verb. I really like that. And yeah, I'm gonna highlight that. All right, so this has been really good content all the way through. I'm really excited about that. And we are saving the best for last, and we're not putting it
Yes.
this time, but I am so I guess I'm mostly just intrigued because when I read your chapter of the Agent Mastermind book, I was like, who is this person and how did she come up with this strategy? And I need to know more. And I feel like
Yes.
so many real estate agents need to know this. So tell me everything. I'm so excited.
I'm very excited to share. So it all begins with, first and foremost, we have to, as real estate agents, get our egos out of the room for a little bit, because there's a lot of big egos in real estate. And you can't typically ask one agent from a brokerage who a great agent is from another brokerage. Everybody, for whatever reasons, have these boundaries and walls and opinions. And I'm not into that. So when I scrapped my team, I went to my lenders that I was giving leads to say, who are you giving these leads to? And asked, you know what, can you connect us? And so
that is genius in and of itself, because the lenders, of course, know which agents are good.
Yes.
We know.
On every transaction, you have
yes.
two. And you could see the ones that are just showing up for their paycheck. You could see, you may not be able to voice it, and you're not going to tell the bad agents to go away. But through my overflow of leads, because some of the things that I do different is I never help buyers in my business anymore. When you get to a certain metric, you don't have to, it's in the book. I'm just going to leave that teaser there. It's in the book.
Yeah.
When you get to certain metrics, you don't have to help buyers. So every lead that would come in, we would field them off to partner them up with an agent. And so then how did I find good agents? Well, I thought, you know what, the lenders are the ones who know who the good agents are. And it doesn't matter what brokerage. Now, I just happen to be at a very high-minded brokerage that they didn't mind. If I'm fielding off buyer leads, they didn't mind at all. So I can field them off to anyone. And so my lenders started giving me names to agents, and then I would meet them. I would have them all meet me at the same day and time at Starbucks and explain to them, hey, as I get leads in, I'd like to field them off to you. If you're available. If you're not, don't pick up the phone. Just only if you're available right then. And it was funny because they would look at me like deer in headlight and be like, what's the catch? There's no catch. If this turns into a lead, if this turns into a sale, I want a 25% referral fee. I do have kind of a two-tier, 25% and 50%, because my 50% are buyers that I'm working with or I've done an interview with, and maybe it's come down to they called me and wanted to see a house, but at the same time somebody called me that wanted a listing. And I'm always going to go to the listing, but I've done work with this buyer. And so that agent isn't getting what might be considered a cold lead. This is somebody who is going to buy. And so it's not going to take them any time to turn that into business. So I use an app. I'm not going to give all the specifics, just a little bit. I use an app that was really easy. It's specific that I use this app. It's the GroupMe app. And the reason I use it is because you don't have to recreate the whole environment as you add people or remove people. The need to remove people will become pretty apparent pretty quickly, because I've had people who come on the board and they take every single lead that comes. They're quick and quick and quick, but they have no turnover rate. There's no referral fees coming in. They're not coachable. They're not showing up on calls. They're not turning in spreadsheets, because there's an accountability aspect I'll talk about in a moment. But it all started with going back to my lenders, because without the lenders, not only do we not have a transaction because we don't have money, but you guys already know that. You know who the good agents are and who the bad ones are. So yeah, I didn't have any shortage of lenders reaching out to me. And there are really good lenders in the industry, but I don't want to rechange all my commitments. Yes, yes, thank you. And when you moved here, we would knock it out of the park.
I know, right?
Yes.
Man, I'm not in Iowa.
Yes, yes. And so that's fun. I would get their names. I would reach out. Let's say you gave me a name of two agents. I'd reach out and just give you all kinds of praises about what great things you thought about them. And if they needed a little bit more business, I do a team approach a little different. Come this Friday, we'll have coffee. They come, they download the app. I teach them the script for how the pass off happens. and then set the bar, because we do have an accountability spreadsheet that goes to them, and we do a weekly coaching call. And it's mainly just helping them with knowledge and things that they need to know. They're new agents, so they may not realize there's resources. Here in Iowa, we have a pretty high dollar fix called Orangeburg for first-time home buyers that can really devastate somebody if agents don't know about it. And it's very easy to do an inspection of that before you get into contract. And so it's just educating them. It's free for them. All they have to do is show up. And mine's Tuesday morning at 7:30. They can call in from bed. It's not a video call. This is just an audio call. You're calling in. During the week, if I was out, if I came across maybe a lender, an inspector, or a painting company, or a window, just somebody who would call in and be a guest on it, they would call in, and then I'll look over their spreadsheets before we went into this call to see if there's any things that I need to educate them on. And then the other benefit to the agents who are on my board is that they could use the board to help themselves. So if their own business started growing, and maybe they took a lead that they couldn't follow up, or maybe they had their own business started growing a lot too, they could come here to say, hey, I need help with the buyer who's available. So they could use my board. Now, the chatting in between the two agents needs to be taken outside my board, off my board. But if you were just looking for help, we know there are good agents in this room. And that's, you create a room in the GroupMe apps. And so they were able to use that as a resource to them. All of this was free. None of this cost any money. And so as the leads come in, we filled them off, and we set up the buyer board. We'd hold weekly group coaching call. When the leads come in 24/7, I've got a virtual assistant, I have a field runner, I have myself, and an admin. As the leads come in via email, phone call, we will field the leads onto this GroupMe 24/7. If somebody's up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they have a lead, we'll field it out. If somebody's up doing it. But otherwise, the first one to respond is the one that's going to get the lead. And then my virtual assistant she's in on every conversation to know who's getting what, who's claiming what, and she'll take those, put them on their spreadsheets, and we expect just a weekly update. Is there something that we can do? Do you have any questions? Just teaching them different scripts that work. And without the spreadsheets or the accountability, you won't know who to keep on your board and who not to. Because the agents that are showing up, I call it your PhD, the agents that are doctors, they're poor, hungry, and desperate, and
Sure.
they want to work. If they're going to work for them, then they'll work for me. And they usually have really good follow through. There are a lot of agents that will just burn through all of your leads. And when you're not seeing good conversion rate, you can easily make one of the calls, the weekly calls, make one of them mandatory. So some of them just won't show up and weed themselves out. Otherwise, you can go into the environment and remove them. There's no hard breakup. And agents can be on multiple agents' boards, and there's no conflict of interest at all. And so if I'm a mega agent and there's 10 other mega agents, the only thing we're going to do is create a really educated agent who's getting a lot of free coaching.
Sure.
And some leads, because if they're going to show up for them, then they're going to show up for me. And we're going to help. Those are the people that we want to keep in the industry.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
we're going to, how much did they have to pay for the lead? Nothing. They get paid when I get paid. So it's equal skin in the business.
And then do you still handle any of your buyers, like close friends and family, or, your favorite repeat client or whoever?
It just depends. Some of it depends on how busy am I and dollar points, just because time is money. And I've got not tons of it, but more overhead now. And so I've got to make sure if it's somebody who had a $60,000 buyer, I would probably do a facilitated buyer interview where I have one of the agents from my board there and do the pass off together. So it's respectful, because if it's coming in from my sphere, and not just a sign call or a cold call that comes in, I want to really respect that they're still being true to me and loyal to me. And I want to make sure that they don't feel that I am not showing up for them. So
Sure.
I will never give up buyers altogether, because I believe that buyers are what train me how to be a good listing agent. And so if I give them up altogether, I'm not going to know what it is that the buyers are looking for and how I direct my sellers to prep a house. And so there'll always be a balance of a few buyers that I'm helping. It's typically the only buyers I work right now are my sellers whose homes I've sold. And so when I've sold their home, they're homeless, they're usually very motivated, and we're going to find a house pretty quickly. And so those are the buyers that I'm helping right now. And I like being part of the whole process because it goes pretty smooth when I'm involved in both sides of it.
Sure.
My sellers actually experience huge benefits from the one agent team because I go into my listing appointments telling them that I never represent buyers, so they'll never be dual agency. My loyalties lie with them, but all leads will be followed up on. By the time we get sold, when they go to find their home, I will get them into any home that they want to see within 2 hours, regardless of what I'm doing, because all I have to do is flip over to my board and grab one of the agents to go show them. Because the last thing they want to hear is, I've got a board of directors meeting, or I have this networking. They don't care. I mean, they do care, but they don't care because they're homeless.
Yeah.
I just made them homeless. And so being able to service them. And so my first question when somebody sends me, we have our scheduled tours that I'll take them on maybe Tuesday, Saturday. But if there's something that pops up, and because that's what happens in this market, it pops up today, you've got to get in today. I will get them into anything they want to see as long as we're allowed within 2 hours of notice. And so the confidence of knowing that they're being taken care of through the whole process. And then with my agents, I do hand select those agents who get those leads. I don't just put those all on my board. It's kind of the reward for being good on the board, because I pay them $20 an hour from when they leave their driveway of their home until they get back to their driveway, or a 25% referral fee. All I want them to do is show the house. If they want to buy, the client comes back to me, I'll write contracts. They're just a showing agent, but they'll get paid that day. And if the client comes back later to buy that, I'll just reduce whatever I paid them from the referral fee.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was chock full of amazing, amazing.
Yes.
I know that you do have a coaching program for folks that are listening and are thinking, like, if I was a real estate agent, I would be thinking right now, I need this, I want this, teach me now. And you have developed a coaching program to help agents nationwide, correct?
Yes. Yeah, worldwide. I've gone up to Canada now. So
oh my gosh.
I actually give the information on how to set up a one agent team away. And so if they find me on Facebook, I've got a one agent team page, and I'll post when I'm going to do a live broadcast, and people can just tune in, ask your questions as you're setting up. But I give the high level of that away. And the individual coaching of implementing and working with your staff to implement to meet kind of your standards, or we use Google products. And once you implement the right tool, it's amazing how effective things become. And so as long as people are open to doing things a little differently, that will make that flow happen quicker, I will coach those people if they want an individual one-on-one on implementing also. But we have a Facebook page right now. We also have a YouTube page that has some videos from some other shows that I've been on that we will push the information out there. But the best way is probably Facebook.
Awesome. And then how else can people find you?
If you just Google me, you'll find me in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm on Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, LinkedIn. I'm on social media. So
you're going global, girl.
Yeah, it's gone worldwide. And isn't it amazing where you come from contribution, and all it's doing through this whole process is it's just creating a better industry by allowing people to do what they're already doing. There are 2 other modules that I haven't even talked about yet. One is designed to help builders. So if there is a builder out there, if you're working with a builder, or if you're trying to get the business of a builder, call me, because there is a builder module, and there's also an investor module. So if you have an investor that does 30 or more transactions with you a year, let me show you, or if you're wanting to get into, that's a love-hate relationship, real estate agents and investors. It's a very hard one. But once you implement a one agent team with an investor, the way this module is designed, it will become a love-love relationship. So it's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that we did this, and I'm sure that everyone listening is glad you came on the show as well. So I think you're amazing. I can't wait to see what's next for you, and I'll definitely be in touch soon.
I appreciate it so much. And thank you. And thank all your listeners, because the more people that implement this and the bigger this ripple becomes. My goal would be that we don't even see for sale by owners, because people wouldn't even choose to do real estate without the help of somebody who's using a one agent team.
So I love it. Well, have an awesome day, Char, and thanks again.
You too. Okay.
Bye.
That was awesome.